Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of Aaron and I's radio show. This is A Dorm Divided. We finally came up with a name. We were trying to do something that had to do with Iowa and Iowa State, but we didn't want to use Cy-Hawk. So A Dorm Divided, kind of like a house divided, but we're at college and I hate Iowa, he hates Iowa State, and that's just how it is.
Yep.
We are on 88.9 KSTM, The Storm here at Simpson College. As I said, I'm Jake Brend. This is Aaron Price. How are you today, Aaron?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, I can't complain.
Yep.
I'm getting sick of this cold weather.
Yeah, it's so cold. I had to walk from Buxton all the way to the chapel today. It's like all the way across campus.
Yeah,
Obviously, campus isn't that big, but it wasn't very fun.
The good thing about cold weather in February, though, is it means that March is right around the corner, and
Yep.
March is going to be a huge month for college basketball, and then we're going to get into some of the NFL draft, NBA playoffs. It's coming up, so
Yep.
I'm excited
you got
for
about,
that.
You got about a month of kind of, mid basketball and, college basketball, but then March is where, you got baseball starting, the draft, and then March Madness. So that's kind of all the fun comes in right there.
Yeah, so we just wrapped up the NFL season on Sunday, which I'm always a pessimist. I'm more the glass is half empty rather than half full. So always on Super Bowl Sunday, I just can't help but think that football season is ending today.
Yeah.
And I just dread like the next 6 or 7 months. But anyways, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won their second Super Bowl, first since I believe it was 2002. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9. Tom Brady won his 5th Super Bowl MVP and his 7th Super Bowl. Just an incredible run for what I think is unquestionably the greatest of all time now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question anymore.
It always comes back to the decision. There's always the conversation in whatever sport is which player's the most talented. If you put this player on this team, would they have won? And you can have those hypotheticals all the time you want, but Tom Brady just won his 7th Super Bowl, and his 7th one was at age 43, and he didn't necessarily dominate, but he put his team in a position to be led all season long, which I think is so impressive. He made some huge throws. Granted,
he played well.
A lot of them were kind of just in the slot. A lot of them were up and under dumps, but he made his second touchdown throw to Gronkowski was just a dime.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't look like he's 43 out there, and it doesn't look like he's stopping anytime soon.
No. Nope. He's coming back. I think, didn't he say it on they had the thing, and he's like, yeah, no question, I'm coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back. So, were you shocked I know we both picked the Buccaneers to win last week, but were you shocked with how they won?
Yes, I was. I was just not expecting. Their defense, didn't. Obviously, they had. I think Kansas City had 2 tackles out or just one? Was it both?
They had both. Iowa State alum, Kachimi, I can never say his name. Osmealy.
Yeah.
Osmealy,
Okay.
and then the right tackle was out
Schwartz.
also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. They had pressure all night, and it didn't seem like they were bringing 4 every time. They weren't blitzing, and they were pressuring half the time they dropped back. So it's no, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, it was crazy because, Patrick Mahomes, on 40 of his dropbacks, he was rushed 24 times.
Yep.
So that it was the highest number in Super Bowl history. And Mahomes didn't necessarily even play that bad. His box score was
his rating
26
was
of 49 for 270 yards, 2 interceptions, took 3 sacks, and had a quarterback rating of 49.9. And I don't think that's necessarily indicative of how he played. I thought he still played about as well as someone could in that position, where he was, the second he caught the ball, he was forced to run for his life. And he made a throw in the 4th quarter where he was horizontal with the ground, falling over, and he put it right on, was it Hardman? Right on target for Hardman?
No, I think it was Kelsey.
Was it Kelsey?
And I think it just hit his face mask.
Yeah, it just went right off his face mask. And if that throw was completed, it might have been one of the best plays in Super Bowl history.
I remember sitting there at halftime, and I'm like, this is going to be one of the greatest Super Bowls ever, because the Chiefs are going to come back and make this game a game, and this is going to go back and forth because that's just how both quarterbacks are. And it just never came out like that. It was disappointing, but it was also cool at the same time.
Yeah, it was. I was cheering just for a good football game,
Yeah.
but I think as soon as it hit halfway through the 3rd quarter, I realized that there's just no way that the Chiefs' offensive line was going to be able to recover. There's no way that they're going to be able to salvage what they were trying to do that day.
Yep.
And that's the one area where you can't really just figure it out. If you start the day getting beat on the offensive and defensive line, there's a very good chance that they're going to spend the entire day getting beat. And if it's different, if it's a quarterback struggling with mental errors or something like that, that can always be corrected. If it's a running back struggling with hitting the right holes, that can be corrected. But when the offensive line is just getting physically outbeaten every play, it's really hard to overcome that. And it ended in Tampa Bay absolutely dominating the Chiefs, which I don't think anyone saw coming.
I didn't see it coming. I don't think anyone did.
So do you think that Tampa Bay won the game, or do you think that Kansas City lost?
I'm going to give Tampa Bay credit. I think they won this game. I mean, they had a great scheme for, obviously Kansas City didn't have both their tackles, but, Tampa Bay schemed for that. They knew they were going to attack their weaknesses, and the two tackles were their weaknesses, and that's what they did. And I said, I mean, they ran the ball well too. Tampa Bay did. They had to run the ball well to, stay in this game. I think they did control most of the possession of the game. And yeah, they did everything they were supposed to do, and credit to them. I don't think Kansas City necessarily lost. They just, got outplayed by the better team in that game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that we talked about it last week. Tampa Bay had one of the best defensive lines in football all year. They were, I believe, 4th in quarterback pressures and sacks throughout the regular season, and just consistently they were a very good unit. And that even includes the stretch of the season where their defense was just not good for the first half of the season. So with that, they still ended 4th. And you saw in this game why they were. They just had a really good pass rush. They have veterans like Ndamukong Suh and Levante David, but they've also got some of the youngsters. I can't think of their names off the top of my head. But to counter that, I would say that Kansas City also, as far as the defensive side of the ball, I think shot themselves in the foot so many times. They had, let me find the penalty numbers. They had 11 penalties on the day for 120 yards. And I know that we might talk about the officiating a little bit, but they had just 3 or 4 holding calls on defense that you just can't do.
Yep.
There was, I believe it was Tom Brady finding Chris Godwin on a 3rd and 8, and he completely overthrew him, but Tyrann Mathieu still grabbed on to the, or it wasn't Tyrann Mathieu, it was a different defensive back, just still grabbed on to Godwin's back when the ball was going to be uncatchable, and that led to a first down. Tampa Bay went down and scored, and it was just plays like that all day. There was another one where Tom threw an interception, but there was a holding behind the play even after the ball was already thrown. So if he just doesn't hold, I think he was holding Godwin again that time. If he wasn't holding Godwin, that's an interception for Kansas City, and that was right before the half too. I think that was with a minute left in the second half. Kansas City could have gone down, got a field goal, got a touchdown, and in the first half we're looking at something like a 7-point game instead of a 14-point game. And I think that's really where the difference was, but I will agree. You got to give Tampa Bay the credit where credit's due. Give credit to Leonard Fournette. He was one of my keys to the game going into it. He had 16 carries for 89 yards, averaging 5.6 yards a carry and a touchdown. And he also had 4 receptions for 46 yards. So Leonard Fournette might have been the unsung hero of the day. Obviously, Tom Brady's going to get the credit because it's Tom Brady, but Leonard Fournette had one of the best performances by a running back in the Super Bowl in a long time.
Yeah, I think we both had him as our sleeper for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had the running game in general. I didn't know which one they'd use the most, but they used Fournette most of the time.
And on top of that, Ronald Jones had 12 carries for 61 yards also.
Yeah,
so it was really
both,
the two-headed monster.
Yep.
Because if you look at Tom Brady's stat line, he threw 29 times, completed 21 of them for just 201 yards, less than 7 yards of completion, but he had 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Tom knows more than anyone that if you want to win a Super Bowl, your stat line has to look like 2-0, not 1-2, not 1-3. Because when you're not turning the ball over and when you're forcing the other team to turn the ball over, 9 times out of 10 you're going to win, no matter how much talent's on the field. I think we can both agree that Kansas City had the most talented roster.
Oh yeah.
mean,
And Tampa Bay they had a really good roster too, but yeah, I think Kansas City's was way better. But yeah, they just got Todd Bowles came out with a great game plan.
mhm.
It was incredible.
It was unexpected.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I say we shift on to the legacy. Do you think that this game, obviously we've already talked about it for Tom Brady, this might be the biggest resume booster to Tom Brady just because there's been that debate of was it him or was it Belichick carrying the weight of the Patriots for all these years? And I think it's equal. I think I think they can't do it without each other. But obviously this win is going to be like in 20 years Brady can hold up that seventh ring and be like, I did it without Bill.
Yep.
I didn't need him. But I was thinking more on the other side of things. When we're talking about the greatest quarterbacks of all time and 15, 20 years, do you think this will be a blemish on Mahomes' record?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, if he doesn't match up with Tom again in the Super Bowl, I think it's gonna hurt him. I mean, significantly. I think he's gonna win another ring. I think he should probably get more MVPs than Tom. I mean, but if they match up again and Mahomes beats him, then I think the talk is still it comes back. You maybe can argue it again, but Tom's the only one that's beat Mahomes. Tom Brady is the only quarterback that Mahomes has lost to in the playoffs.
Yep.
So if Mahomes can avoid him, somehow, then yeah, I think if Kansas City plays someone else in the Super Bowl besides the Bucs, I think Kansas City wins. But yeah, I think it's just Tom that'll be able to beat him because it's Tom Brady.
And I think it's also important. It's so much easier to do this in basketball because
it is.
You can be like, if LeBron and MJ played in the NBA Finals, it comes down to the last shot. LeBron can guard MJ. MJ can guard LeBron. In football, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are never going to be on the field at the same time.
Exactly.
So there's so many other factors. Obviously, in basketball, there's a bunch of factors too. But I think more so in football, as we saw, if your offensive line doesn't show up, if your offensive line gives them a D performance, the best the quarterback can really do is like a B- or a B+ at best. And in basketball, if no one on the court is making shots, we saw this Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, MJ, LeBron can just take over the game and put it in their own hands. And I think that's where the GOAT conversation is in football is so much harder.
Yeah.
Because you could very well make the argument that with this roster, the Chiefs could have made the playoffs or could have made the Super Bowl without Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I don't know how likely that it is.
Yeah, they could have. Mm-hmm.
But if you Mahomes is, I believe, the best quarterback in the NFL right now. But if you put someone who's like maybe the 7th or 8th best quarterback on that roster, I think they still have a very good chance to make the playoffs. So that's where it's we'll talk about this in our awards recap, but that's where it's the line between valuable and best, and that's where it's really tricky. But I think it just depends on what the rest of Mahomes' career looks like, because we've seen this where you have a team that wins a Super Bowl and they come back the next regular season firing, and you're like, is this the next dynasty? Is this the next Patriots? Is this the next 90s Cowboys to win 3-4 Super Bowls in a decade? And for every one of those teams there's teams like the Seahawks, where the Seahawks absolutely steamrolled the Denver Broncos in 2013.
Oh, yeah.
Came back, they should have won another one in 2014 if they handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. And the Seahawks haven't been back since.
Nope.
So we'll have to see where it goes, but you could completely make the argument that the Chiefs are just the next one and done.
Yep.
Because if you look at their roster and the way the roster is built, they're putting a lot of money into guys like Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, Travis Kelce. But when you put money into skill positions like that, eventually after 3 or 4 years, the offensive line gets old, and some of them get beat up, some of them retire, some of them get injured.
Yeah,
you can't pay them.
The biggest thing is like defense. Like defenses in the NFL, like you see like 3 years of them be good, and then all of a sudden they just like kind of just tail off. Quietly. The Broncos, when they had those 3 years with Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Peyton Manning was, when he won the MVP one of those years. But those 2 years, I think he won the MVP, and then there was 2 other years he was in the NFL. Am I right?
Yeah. I think he was in Denver 3 years.
I mean, he was regressing, but their defense was still good, and arguably their defense won them that last Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Their Von Miller was spectacular in that game, and you kind of see that with the Seahawks too. You know, they were the Legion of Boom. They had like those 4 D-backs that were just insane.
The best defensive backfield of all time.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then you see it with the Panthers when they went 15-1 that year. They had a really good defense. And you kind of with the Chiefs, they don't have that great of a defense. So I think it's one of those things where, you know, they're still going to be there. I don't see them. I don't think they're going to be a one and done type team because they have a great quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is having a quarterback that you can build around, and they've already got him so secured for the long term. He signed a 10-year contract, which is absolutely unheard of. So to have him locked up, to have the position that ages the best in the NFL for the most part is the tight end position. So to have the best or the second best tight end in the league locked up also. It's really just about hitting the draft picks.
Yep.
I mean, that's how New England does it. New England rarely wins with stars. They would win with Tom, solid offensive line, and a good defense.
Yep.
And they didn't do that necessarily through free agency. They did that through drafting guys that they could use for 3 years, and then when it came time to pay them, trade them for more draft picks.
Yep.
So it really just comes down to Kansas City's front office, and I think that, I mean, they already did put their team in a position to win a Super Bowl. They did it last year.
Yep.
They were inches away this year. So I think it really just – it'll come up on the Kansas City front office, not Patrick Mahomes, to win another Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's going to do it for our Super Bowl talk. We are going to go to a quick song, and we'll be back as we recap the winners of the 2021 NFL Honors. Is that what they call it? It's not like the NFL Awards. It's a different name.
Yeah, it might be NFL Honors. I'm not sure though.
But yeah, we will be back with the NFL Honors in about 3 minutes. Welcome back to A Dorm Divided. This is 88.9 KSTM, the Storm radio station here at Simpson College. I'm Jake Brend. Aaron Price with me again. Just a second for station identification. And right now we're going to talk about the NFL Honors of 2021, which is the award winners. And I'll just give a quick rundown to who won. So MVP of the NFL this year was Aaron Rodgers, making it the 3rd time that he's won MVP in his career. One of those guys where it felt like he probably should have had 1 or 2 more, but 3 is a pretty good number to retire with. The Offensive Player of the Year was Derrick Henry, running back of the Tennessee Titans, finished with over 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 17 touchdowns. He became the 8th member of the NFL's 2,000 rushing yards club in NFL history with 2,027 yards. The Defensive Player of the Year was Aaron Donald, defensive tackle of the Rams. Arguably a top 3 defensive player of all time in the NFL. He is just so unbelievably dominant. I know that you probably don't like him because of Luke.
No, I don't like Aaron Donald at all, but yeah, he's very talented, and yeah, he deserves this award too.
The Offensive Rookie of the Year was Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers at quarterback. It'll be interesting to follow his career. I know that we'll go a little more in depth with these awards. The Defensive Rookie of the Year was Chase Young, the defensive end out of Ohio State for the Washington football team. The Comeback Player of the Year, I don't think there was any argument with this one. It was Alex Smith. Alex Smith broke his leg in 2018, and he nearly had to cut off his leg.
Yeah.
Like, that's how serious an injury it was. I think it got infected like while in surgery. And he was pretty much told you'll never be able to play football again. But this year in week 5 of the 2020 season, he took over as the starter and made his return to the football field, which completely well-deserved award for Comeback Player of the Year. Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns was Coach of the Year. We'll talk about that a little more. And Russell Wilson won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which I don't really know how they determine that.
Yeah, I don't know how, something with their community and what they do.
But back up to the MVP. I know that we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think we're both in agreement that Aaron Rodgers deserved it.
Yeah. His QB rate. I mean, he was spectacular all year. I think they were first in the NFC, right? I think. Yep.
So
they
had home
first
field.
in the NFC. And yeah, I mean, the only other person it could have been was Mahomes, and Rodgers was better than him in, almost every statistical category. So I don't see how it's not him.
Yeah, it's crazy how Aaron Rodgers is 37 and still just, I mean, we talked about it last week, but they drafted whatever his name is.
Jordan Love.
Yeah, Jordan Love. And people were wondering if Jordan Love was going to beat out Rodgers for the starting job, or are the Packers going to trade Rodgers? And I think that he kind of felt that fire under his seat a little bit and came out and really had something to prove this year. He threw for 4,299 yards in 16 games, completed 70.7% of his passes. Anytime a quarterback with that high volume can eclipse the 70% rating is just extremely impressive. He also threw for 48 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, which is, one of just the all-time best seasons.
Yeah.
I think it goes without saying that Aaron Rodgers completely deserved this award.
Yep.
And I think even if you did give it to Mahomes, you couldn't have really argued it that much. But I think that what Rodgers meant to his team this year was more than Mahomes meant to his team.
I agree.
If we'll use your friend Mitch Trubisky. If you put Trubisky on the Packers, they might not make the playoffs. If you put Trubisky on the Chiefs, they're still probably like a 2 or 3 seed in the AFC.
Yeah. Trubisky, well, he didn't lead us to the playoffs, but yeah, he kind of did at the end. You forgot an award. He was Nickelodeon MVP, so.
Oh, yeah, the MVP.
Yeah.
Did you know they did a Nickelodeon broadcast of the Super Bowl too?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
I get too in the zone for football to be able to watch something that
I turned it on when I was watching the Bears game on the Nickelodeon channel, and I'm just like, I'm not watching this. This is gonna tick me off.
But Trubisky was the MVP, so that's a huge honor. So the next one is the Offensive Player of the Year, which is Derrick Henry, and I think that's such just a hard award to, because I feel like it should be the MVP.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, I just don't want. I don't think they want to get I don't know. I think it's more. They think of who. I think the MVPs obviously they actually think about who's more valuable to the team, and then the Offensive Player of the Year is okay. Who had the best stats compared to everyone else at their position, and since he got 2,000 rushing yards, I feel like that's just what they were gonna do. If a player got 2,000 receiving yards, it would have went to him. You know what I mean? Because he had great offensive stats compared to quarterbacks and their offensive stats and receivers and their offensive stats and tight ends. I just feel like that's why they gave it to him.
Yeah, it's so hard to go against Derrick Henry just because he's one of the most likable players in the league.
He is, yeah. I don't know how you have no reason to dislike him. He doesn't really talk much, and he doesn't boast or brag about anything.
Mm-mm.
But I wouldn't want to tackle him. He's put a lot of people in, memes and stuff.
Yeah, he's one of those players that flew under the radar his first few years
because
in the
he
league.
was behind DeMarco Murray. He didn't see really the field that much his first 3 years. People kind of just didn't know he was there, and then these last couple years he has been getting almost all the carries, and that's how he's kind of, breaking out, and that's what you see since he wasn't getting that many carries his first 3 years, his body wasn't that beaten up, you know what I mean? So he's probably going to be one of those running backs where you see him, playing in the league in his, not maybe his mid-30s, but normal, longer than other running backs do.
Someone like Frank Gore or Carlos Hyde, guys like that, where they play just longer than they probably should. And I'm looking at the votes right now. Henry tallied 32 first-place votes, and then Rodgers and Mahomes split with 5 each. So it was a pretty far and away win for Derrick Henry, and I think it was
deserving,
well deserved. And now I think the most controversial was Aaron Donald winning Defensive Player of the Year over T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was a much closer vote where Donald got 27 and Watt got just 20, and then Miami Dolphins quarterback Xavier Howard finished in 3rd place. But this was very clearly a 2-man race, and it's so hard. This is where it gets tough in deciding these awards because they play 2 completely different positions.
Exactly.
Where T.J. Watt is a linebacker or pass rusher, So his stats are going to be entirely based off of how many sacks did he get, how many just overall tackles did he get. And for Donald, it's more stuff that doesn't show up on the pass sheet.
Yep.
Obviously, tackles for losses are huge for nose guards and defensive tackles. Tackles are also pretty big, and so are sacks. But so much of what Aaron Donald does is he soaks up 2 or 3 blockers every single time he's on the play, which opens up other linebackers on the team or other pass rushers on the team to be able to get to the quarterback. So who did you think deserved this award?
Yeah, this is one where I think T.J. Watt has better stats, but Aaron Donald's, more valuable to your team. So it's like I don't know what criteria they're going by here. My pick probably would have been Aaron Donald. If you just watch both of them just play a football game, just one football game each, just watch the whole game or just the defensive side of things and see who affects the game more, and it's going to be Aaron Donald. He does, like you said, draw 2 to 3 blockers each and every play. And you kind of saw that when they played the Packers, where he wasn't playing that much because he was injured. And you could see that affected how Green Bay ran the ball. I think Green Bay ran the ball pretty well that game. So you see how big of a difference, he can make in games because, when he's not on the field, then, linemen can, take on one-on-one blocks with their opponent. So.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that this is Donald's 3rd Defense Player of the Year in the last 4 years.
Yeah, so sometimes voters don't like getting repetitive about that type of thing. So, I don't know.
It really comes down to the voters on what they prefer. If
they
prefer stats. And I think another area that played into it was the Rams ended the season very strong. They ended with a lot of momentum, playing well, and the Steelers lost, was it 5 out of their last 6 games?
Yeah,
it was a really bad record. So the Rams finished as the best rated scoring defense in the league in the regular season, and the Steelers did not because they slid so hard.
This is one of those where didn't they give, back in 2003, I think they gave co-MVP to Peyton Manning and might have been Steve McNair or something.
Yeah.
This is one of those where I would have been like, all right, this could be a co-defensive player of the year thing. Because
Yeah.
I would have been fine with either or because they both deserve it.
Yep, I totally agree. I would have been fine with that. The next couple we can just touch on a little bit. Justin Herbert, I thought, was pretty deserving of Offensive Rookie of the Year. He took over for Tyrod Taylor in week 2 after he got hurt. Put up the numbers, looked good. The Chargers just didn't win games.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys on defense that were hurt. They were in every single game. I think the first 10 games he started, they lost every single one of their games that they played, whether they won or lost, was a 1-possession game. So they were always in the game, and he was really good. And granted, he didn't have Austin Eckler most of the year. That kind of, that makes a little bit of a difference. And he had, Keenan Allen, but, their skill positions don't jump out to you as much.
No.
Especially without Austin Eckler. They had Keenan Allen. That was it. And I don't know. I think their tight end's all right, and they've got a couple other receivers. But, that was impressive.
Yeah, Herbert won this award by a pretty wide margin,
yeah.
41-9 over. I think Justin Jefferson had a lot of momentum towards the beginning of the season, but he tend to level off.
I don't see how you give it to. Yeah, I don't know how you can give it to a wide receiver.
A wide receiver who didn't make that huge of an impact.
Yeah,
he was good.
He wouldn't have been as good without Adam Thielen.
No.
Adam Thielen was, you could argue, was a better receiver on that team, so he would draw more attention, especially at the beginning of the year because no one knew how good Jefferson really was. And so Jefferson, you saw that at the beginning of the year he's a lot more open. But yeah, I think Herbert deserved this one for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I don't think there's any argument against Chase Young.
Mm-mm.
Let me see what the vote was on Chase Young. Chase Young won 42.5 to 4.5. So he won over Jeremy Chin, Patrick Queen, and Antoine Winfield Jr., who had a huge play the other night, holding up the peace sign to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's any point discussing that. Chase Young, one of the best pass rushing prospects to come out of college in a long, long time, and he's gonna have a good career in my division against the Cowboys,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And do you have anything against Stefanski winning it? I think of any team, the Browns made very few moves this offseason. They made a lot of moves 2 off seasons ago, and it didn't work out with Freddie Kitchens as the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Stefanski came in there, buttoned it up, and they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
They made the divisional round.
I think this award usually is based off of, because this was Stefanski's, was it first or second year?
First.
Yeah, so usually you see first coaches get, first-time head coaches get it, and then you look at like how big of the win, like how many more wins from the year before did they get? I think that was like 6 more. You saw that with Matt Nagy in Chicago like 2 years ago, and so I think that's the basis of what Coach of the Year should get. Another coach that should get a lot of credit would be Brian Flores.
Yep,
he was very good this year too.
I was gonna bring up, if the Dolphins made the playoffs, Flores would have been more in the conversation.
Yep, I agree.
He's one of the best young. He's gonna be one of those coaches we talk about for a long time.
Yep.
He's kind of the Sean McVay of defensive coaches.
Yeah. Yep.
Where he's just so good on the defensive side of the ball, and I think I'm hoping I like to cheer for the Dolphins. I'm hoping that they're good for the next 10, 15 years.
Yep.
I'm Jake Brend on 88.9 KSTM The Storm. With me, as always, Aaron Price. Aaron, are you ready to talk some NFL draft?
Let's do it.
Really early stuff. The draft order is finalized. Of course, not including trades yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the first thing that we're going to talk about is just the storyline of quarterbacks. This is one of the biggest year for quarterbacks in a long time. We have Trevor Lawrence, the best quarterback, pound-for-pound prospect since Andrew Luck came into the league back in, I believe it was 2011.
Yeah, 11 or 12, I can't remember.
Zach Wilson from BYU is another very, very good prospect. Justin Fields has one of the best arms that we've seen come into the league in the last 5 years. Trey Lance from North Dakota State. We didn't get to see too much of him this last year because there was no FCS season, but I think that they played one game.
Yeah, they played one game early in early September, maybe even late August, to just kind of pretty much for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also Mac Jones, who was Heisman runner-up.
Yep.
Yeah, he was Heisman runner-up to his teammate Devontae Smith. So right there, we've got 5 quarterbacks that are for sure going to go in the first round, you would think. Do you want to take me through your list of where you think all 5 of those quarterbacks are going to go?
Yeah, okay. I think Trevor Lawrence goes number 1, and that's obvious to the Jaguars. The Jets is hard because I don't know. I think if they don't trade their pick, that they're really. I think they're going to take Fields. And I think actually they're going to take Fields or Wilson. I really don't know. Whoever the 4th pick, who's the Falcons, they're going to take whichever one's available, Wilson or Fields. I think, and then that's the Lions or the Panthers are going to get, and then I think it'll be Trey Lance next to the Lions or the Panthers, and then I think you see Mac Jones maybe going to the football team, maybe the Bears, maybe the Steelers. But I think those 5 for sure are going to get drafted in the 4th round. You could see a 6th one in Kyle Trask, depending if someone reaches to get Mac Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the order will go Lawrence. I'm going to go Fields, Wilson, Lance, Jones. I think that's how it'll go.
Yeah, so I'll agree. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 to the Jags. If they don't draft Lawrence, man, there would have to be something seriously wrong to happen with. He would have to have some Markelle Fultz type stuff happen to him in the pre-draft process.
Yeah.
The Jets are tough because I think that Zach Wilson overall is a little bit better of a prospect than Justin Fields, but Fields has a little more of that New York City type exposure around him. I think he's got a little more of a play style that people are going to want to watch.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Zach Wilson, but I still think that the Jets are going to take Wilson. I don't know why would I have behind that, but I think that he is such an accurate passer. He does all the footwork right. He's a good game manager, and I think that's what the Jets need more than anything at this point. Trade Sam Darnold for a second-round pick. Then you can build up, I guess they've already got a good offensive line. Then you can continue to build the defense, maybe get a playmaker or two for Zach Wilson and kind of start over.
Yeah.
But that's what the Jets can't be back in one day. They need to build slowly over time. And I think Zach Wilson might be a little bit more of a for sure than Justin Fields. But I think Fields has a higher ceiling, but Wilson has the higher floor, if that's how I look for it.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with you. I think that Justin Fields will go, I guess whatever player doesn't get picked will go to the Falcons at 4. Matt Ryan is getting up there in age. He's at age 36,
Yeah, 36,
I think.
37, yeah.
So this is the perfect time, especially if it's a guy bearing anyone trading up to 3 with the Dolphins, you're pretty much guaranteed to get either Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. And I think those are two guys that no matter which one would be a perfect player to have learning from behind Matt Ryan, who's been one of the best quarterbacks consistently over the last 10 years.
Yep, I agree.
I think that would be just a really good situation for the Falcons to be in. And maybe next year you pass off the reins to him and you continue to build around them in the draft. I have Trey Lance going to the 49ers. The reason I don't have him going to Carolina is because I think that Carolina is going to make a trade for Deshaun Watson. I think they're going to be the team that does it, which would obviously lead them not to draft a quarterback. Yeah. So, obviously, if that happens, though, or if that doesn't happen, I think that Trey Lance will go to Carolina. But I just have a weird suspicion that Trey Lance is going to fall down to the 49ers at 12, which I think would be a dream fit for both parties. I think that Kyle Shanahan can make him a really good quarterback. Lance obviously has a huge arm, and being able to play out in California in the warmer weather, I think would be a huge thing for Trey Lance. But I'll be honest, I just haven't seen much of Lance play because he only had a 1-game season this last year. And you've heard of him being one of the best prospects for the last 2 or 3 years, but you just haven't really gotten to see much from him. But I think that him in San Francisco would be a pretty good scenario. And then finally, I've got Mac Jones going to the Bears. I think that it's time for the Bears to move on from whatever they're doing unless they make a trade. And that's what's so difficult is you mentioned the teams like the Bears, the Steelers, the Lions. There's a couple other teams, the Panthers, that could use a quarterback this offseason, but if they don't draft a quarterback, it's not like that was their only chance.
Yeah.
So it really depends on if Sam Darnold gets traded to wherever he gets traded, where Deshaun Watson goes, and maybe even where Russell Wilson goes from what we've heard. Could Mac Jones fall to the Saints down in the 20s to replace Drew Brees, or are they going to go with Jameis Winston? And that's why there's so many question marks where maybe a 6th quarterback like Kyle Trask does fall in the first round, but I think for sure the farthest that Mac Jones will drop would be like 22 or 24. Mm-hmm. But I think he'd be a good fit in either Chicago or Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And he's kind of just like he's kind of Big Ben light.
Yeah.
I think the better comparison would be like Matt Barkley.
Yeah.
But I think Matt Barkley is a player that you could compare to Big Ben in play style, so I think he would fit nicely in Pittsburgh. But I think just as a David Montgomery fan, it'd be nice to get to see him play next to Mac Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we already mentioned Deshaun Watson a little bit. Do you think that there's any surprise teams that make that trade into the top 3 to maybe shore themselves up for a quarterback? Like we've got, let's see, the draft order right here. We've got some teams like the Vikings that could potentially trade into the top 3 to get their quarterback of the future. We've got the Patriots who could potentially do the same thing. I don't think it's as likely.
Yep.
Obviously the Texans trying to get their pick back. Do you think that there's any trade that we see on draft night that's surprising? Or I guess any team that backs out either?
I think the most likely team to trade up, and I think this honestly makes most sense, would be the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're young on defense. They have no reason to panic, so they have no reason. Like the Bears Ryan Pace is going to panic. He's not going to draft a quarterback. I truly believe that. I think he's in win now mode, so he's going to give up anything he can to get a quarterback who can win now, like maybe Carson Wentz or Derek Carr or Deshaun Watson. I mean, Bears are, I think, throwing in everything they can. I know they offered like 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder for Stafford, and then the Rams came in and just offered a deal that, they couldn't pass up. The Lions couldn't pass up. But I think the team will be the football team. And I think they have a fair amount of picks that they can give to either. I think their trade would be with the Dolphins. I think you could see 3 quarterbacks go in the first 3 picks because Washington moves up and takes Wilson or Fields, and I think that's actually a really good fit for them. I think though one of those quarterbacks can groom under Ron Rivera. I like Ron Rivera. I think he's a really good coach. And then they have a good young defense. They have a good quarterback or a good running back. Excuse me. They got a good receiving. I mean, they have a decent roster, and they just need that. They need that quarterback.
They did make the playoffs, albeit it was the NFC East, which isn't necessarily that big of an accomplishment. But they do have, outside of the quarterback position, which frankly was just a mess this year, Dwayne Haskins has not panned out in any way, shape, or form. He's been arguably one of the most disappointing prospects of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Alex Smith, great story, but he's not the future.
Yeah.
He looked good at points, but he's coming off of a severe leg injury, and he's already old as it is, so he's not the quarterback of the future. And I would agree, if you do see a team like Washington trade into 3, I think that's where you start to see the dominoes fall.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where, if you get to the 4th pick and Lawrence, Fields, and Wilson are all gone, that's when the Falcons are like, oh, do we still want this pick? Do we trade back?
That's where things, if someone jumps in for that 3rd pick, that's where you could see, okay, this is going to get interesting because now the Dolphins are the Falcons might panic a little bit. And then maybe, the Panthers or Lions are going to start being like, oh crap, maybe we got to trade up and get Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Falcons are going to grab him. But yeah, I think it doesn't matter who goes in. If someone trades up for that 3rd pick and takes a quarterback, it doesn't matter who it would be. It would cause a mess. It would cause maybe teams to panic. So if that does happen, teams like the Chargers and the Bengals they don't have nothing to worry about. Maybe that's going to help things for them because the Bengals I think will draft that tackle out of Oregon, Sewell or something.
Yeah, Penei Sewell.
Yeah, and I don't know who the Dolphins will, or not the Dolphins, the Chargers will get, but those are 2 teams that don't have to panic as much. But you see teams who, I can't tell who's in need, who really needs a quarterback right now because
there's a lot of teams on the edge.
There's one team that actually needs a quarterback, and that would be the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
Other teams can they don't need a quarterback. They want one, but they don't need one. Like the Jets, they don't need a quarterback. They want one. Same with the Falcons. Because they have Matt Ryan. Obviously, he's getting older, but
I would honestly say the only 2 teams in the top 15 that need one are the Jaguars and the football team.
Yeah, the football team and the Jaguars.
And I would argue the Panthers are in there too. I don't think Teddy is the long-term option.
Yeah, Teddy is a quarterback where if he has a good roster around him, he could actually lead them to the playoffs. But that division's really good.
Yeah, too. Yeah. That's one of the best divisions in football. We don't have to get too far off topic, but the signing of Teddy Bridgewater still makes no sense because they paid him so much money, and they were in line to be the worst team in the league this year.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't end up being that bad, but if they didn't have Teddy Bridgewater, they might have lost like an extra game or 2, and they might be in the conversation of, oh, can they get Justin Fields now? Can they maybe get Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, they kind of shot themselves in the foot there.
Yeah, and that one didn't make sense with a first-year coach in Matt Rule, but it is what it is. Where do you think – you already talked about Penei Sewell going to the Bengals. I think that's the best-case scenario for him. Actually, I don't know about for him, but best-case scenario for Joe Burrow is getting someone who can protect his blind side.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the best one of the best tackle prospects we've seen in a while.
Yeah, probably best since Laramie Tunsil back in 2015, I think.
Mm-hmm. I don't see how they pass up on that. Their offensive line was brutal this year, and that's a good start for them.
Yeah, the way you build an offensive line is you start with the left tackle. When you have a star left tackle, it makes everyone else's jobs a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think seeing Sewell go to the Bengals would be awesome. This mock draft I looked at this morning on CBS had Sewell falling to my Cowboys at 10, which that would be a dream, but I don't think there's any chance that even teams ahead of them like the Denver Broncos, the Detroit Lions, if Sewell falls to them, that's a really hard thing to pass up because there's some teams that go into draft night where they're just like, no matter what our need is, we're going to take the best player available.
Yep.
And when there's a player like Sewell who can be a transcending offensive tackle, I think that's where you kind of just pull the trigger and say, you know what, we might have needed a linebacker, but this offensive tackle is of the future. He can be our starting left tackle, starting quarterback protector for the next 12 years, so you just take him.
Yep.
And I don't think there's any way that the Bengals can pass that up.
I agree.
So we're about short on time. We're going to talk about 3 more things. The first is, where do you think the playmakers of this draft are going to come from? Mostly wide receivers. Where do you think Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith are going to end up?
Well, I think if the Dolphins don't trade their pick, they will take Devontae Smith. I don't see them passing up on him. I think he's really good. Obviously, I think the Eagles. I don't know because they've taken they took a first round receiver last year. You don't see teams taking back-to-back first round receivers, but they are also in need of a receiver. Mm-hmm. So I can see them taking Jamar Chase. If the Lions don't like the quarterback that they want, because we don't know, what organizations are looking at. We don't know from the inside. So maybe the Lions are like, okay, we're only taking a quarterback if it's Fields or Wilson. Say those two get taken. Their next need is wide receiver because they lose Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Gives them a playmaker for Jared Goff because they literally have no one. They already have a running back and tight end. They won't get defense. So I can see the Lions getting a receiver, Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith. But
I could even see them drafting Jalen Waddle too.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle will be in there. I see him falling a little bit into the mid rounds. I still think if there's no trades in the top 10, I think Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith go in the top 10. But yeah, that would be. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know when a running back's gonna get taken. Najee Harris is the best, and if there were to be a running back in the first round, it will be only him. But I'm trying to think on the top of my head.
I don't think this is a year where we see a first round running back.
Yeah, but granted, I also thought that last year, and then you saw, wasn't there only one running back last year in the first round? Wasn't it Hilaire?
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted 20.
No, he was the
30,
last pick.
Yeah, 32nd to the Chiefs.
So I think he was the only running back, and I thought there would be none in the first round last year's draft. But yeah, I can maybe see the Steelers taking him. James Conner, injury prone, but I think we definitely see Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase go top 10.
Yeah, I think Smith, if the Dolphins stay in, that's just an obvious fit next to Tua. The Dolphins need a playmaker. That's where we saw them missing the most. I think that Chase would make sense if for some reason the Falcons were to take Sewell before the Bengals get to him. I think their next need would be a playmaker, so they could grab Chase there. That's only if Sewell's not on the board. Eagles, of course, Lions. I think all those would make sense. What would scare me is if Jamar Chase was on the board when the Cowboys came up, just because I know that it's not a need at all. Wide receiver is probably their strongest position, but I still know that if a star wide receiver comes up when Jerry Jones is on the clock, he's going to be extremely tempted to pick to pick him, and I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
I don't like the thought of that. But I guess that leads us in. We're just going to do like a 1-minute thing on each of our teams. What are the biggest needs for your Bears, and who do you think that they're going to take in the first round?
I see them. Their biggest needs right now, offensive tackle and wide receiver. I feel like if Smith, Waddle, or Chase aren't available, which I am 99% sure they won't be for them at 20, then you see there's plenty of tackles. I think there's a guy, Slater from Northwestern, who they could get, and then Elijah Very Tucker, who's a tackle from USC. I like both of those. I watched a couple film on them, so I like both of those guys, and I think we see, if the pick's not traded, I think we see one of those two tackles go to them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And for my Cowboys, their need is just defense, pretty much everything possible in defense, and then potentially some offensive linemen, just as the linemen that they drafted in the early 2010s are all getting old, retiring, hurt. But I don't think that's their biggest need as of now. I think their biggest need is just the secondary. So if Pat Surtain the second is up there, they obviously should take him every single time. But there's a good chance that he does get drafted before then by a team like Atlanta, by a team like the Lions. But if he's there at 10, you take him. And then I think, unfortunately, it's a pretty weak defensive back year. The next best one would be Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. And he's being slated in like the the mid to late first rounds. So this could actually be a good opportunity if Surtain's not available for the Cowboys to trade back to the 15 or 16 range if a team's looking to make the jump up to grab a quarterback.
Yep.
But I think defensive back, Cowboys have just had horrible luck with that. They drafted Chidobe Azubuike out of Colorado a couple of years ago. He didn't pan out. Morris Lattimore.
Morris Claiborne.
Yeah, Morris Claiborne. They drafted him in the top 5. He didn't work out. So the Cowboys they need to have a good year at the NFL draft this year. Because if they don't, they're going to be in huge trouble next year.
Yep.
But we didn't even get to hit on NBA today.
No.
We will be back with that next week. But that's going to do it for this week's show, A Dorm Divided. I'm glad you were able to tune along for all of our NFL talk. But until then, stay warm. This is 88.9 KSTM, The Storm. I'm Jake Brend, and for Aaron Price, we want to sound off.